Hey everyone, Adam here. So in today's video, I wanted to talk about how living simply, or intentional living, however you want to phrase it, depending on where you are in the process, it can be a lot of work. Now, just to give you some context, I'm more talking about trying to kind of purge items or things in your life that no longer matter. And again, this could be physical possessions, physical things, but it can also be more of an emotional or mental things that you may want to purge from your life as well. For example, saying no to particular activities that no longer serve a purpose. Now, why can this be hard? Well, for the mental or the emotional type stuff, one of the reasons that can be difficult is it can be very, very difficult to say no. So for example, let's say someone asks you, you have kids, and someone asks you to bake cookies for some fundraiser. But if you honestly don't have time, or you don't find that a priority, you may feel guilty for saying no. So in that situation, it might be hard to say no. And then if you say yes, you really don't have the time for various reasons, or something that doesn't interest you. It can be stressful because you're kind of falling into that pressure. Now, I am certainly not saying don't donate or don't contribute, but there might be other alternatives that might be a better solution just because you are already exceedingly busy. So for example, maybe you could buy cookies if you could afford it and want to pay money for the cookies instead of baking them. Another thing is instead of saying like, oh, look, I really don't have time to bake these cookies, but would you guys be willing to accept a donation instead? So there are many, many alternatives to kind of simplify things from an emotional, mental standpoint. Now let's get into the physical portion of this, of actually like purging items that no longer serve you and why that's difficult. And that's difficult for a number of reasons. Let's say you've been living in the same place or a house for 30 plus years. More than likely, you have accumulated a ton of stuff if you haven't been mindful of what you've been putting into your house. And honestly, even if you are mindful, the stuff can creep up on you. Before you know it, you look around and you're like, wow, I've got a lot more stuff than I anticipated. So if you get in the mindset of like, hey, look, I really want to just simplify things and start purging things that no longer serve me, at that stage, it can be exceedingly overwhelming. And I'm not going to lie, it's going to be a tremendous amount of work to maybe get to a state where you feel more, where you feel like you've really, really simplified your items in your life. So as I said, it's going to take time. It's going to take time to organize all of this stuff. And it's also potentially very easy to lose motivation. If you're overwhelmed, it's very easy to just give up. So some tips and tricks on that. Basically, I would take one room at a time. I'm a big proponent of whatever area you spend the most in. Let's say you're working and you're working at your desk, focus in on your desk. Try to simplify that. Again, if you want. I don't want to force people into simplifying things, but if you feel overwhelmed with the amount of stuff in your work desk, take that and see how it feels. Simplify that portion. You're in that space a majority of your day, and see how it feels and kind of take it slow. Now, let's say you've already simplified your life, or let's say in this example you're a college student that doesn't have that much stuff because you've been kind of moving from apartment to apartment, and you haven't had an income to really afford like a ton of stuff, depending on your situation. So if all of a sudden you decide that you want to live a simplified life, or live with intention or conscious purchasing, whatever you want to call this, you at that point in time are probably in a much better spot than someone that's been living in a house for 30 plus years. Because now all you have to do really is just maintain. Now, I don't want to minimize the difficulty in maintaining, because even that requires a fair amount of conscious work and effort. Now you might be asking, but why would this part be difficult? Well, you are inherently going to be bombarded with a lot of marketing type pressure. And you're also going to be bombarded with a lot of things that are going to suggest buy this, buy that. And if you're a college student that gets a job, all of a sudden now you may have an income. And whenever you get an income, you may feel the need to spend that income. And so if you really, really want to be mindful of the things that you purchase, all of a sudden you have an increase in income and you're getting all of this pressure from commercials and marketing kind of saying like, oh yeah, maybe that item will really help me out. And maybe this item will really help me out. Well, before you know it, you might be that individual that's living in a house for 30 plus years with a ton of stuff. So again, I don't want to discourage you from not purchasing anything that brings you joy into your life. But again, it's just one of these things of just being mindful, and that being mindful actually takes a fair amount of work. And I do want to end on this note. I've just spent a great portion talking about like trying to cut things out of your life. And I'm going to give you some advice. If you want to buy something that brings you joy into your life, or what you think is going to bring joy into your life, do it. If you have the means and can afford it, go for it. That's not what this video is about. This video is just about getting you to think of what you may or may not want to bring in your life, both emotionally and physically, and to think about really what is important, what you prioritize, and what you value. And going through those steps, especially if you've accumulated a lot of emotional items that you feel obligated, that you're required to do, and a lot of physical things, then, you know, if you want to start purging those things from your life, like I said, it's going to take work, and just be prepared that it will take some work and some time. So enjoy the journey. For me, I can say doing this journey has been rewarding, and I do feel, although I'm not nearly as far along as I necessarily envision myself, maybe, I don't know, that I'm definitely enjoying it, and I feel already, I feel good when I do kind of release things that are no longer serving purpose in my life. It feels like a big weight has been lifted from me, and it feels good. All right, I have rambled on long enough. That's it for this video, and as always, thanks for watching.